Greetings, students. Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy here. Today I want to share with you my teaching philosophy. There are several reasons for this. Basically, I want to orient you to what my goals are, basically what I'm all about, and the way I have designed my courses, the way I conduct myself, what my goals are, so you can kind of get oriented and know what to expect. So let's go ahead and begin. As you can see, my teaching philosophy has 3 P's: purpose, preparation, and practice. Let's start with purpose. The first thing about me, as a teacher, as a human being, I absolutely hate arbitrary. I loathe arbitrary with the fire of 10,000 suns. I hate arbitrary almost as much as I hate raisins that look like chocolate chips. That's how much I hate it. And here's why. Time and money is typically finite. Maybe somebody has all the money in the world, so if they spend money on one thing, they don't have any less money to spend on something else. But for most people, money is finite. But for everybody, time is finite. You cannot buy more time necessarily. So there are resources that are limited, and we have to choose how we're going to spend our time, our money, our energy. There's only so much emotion. There's only so much ability to focus. Basically, time is limited. Energy is limited. How do we spend it the best possible way? There is so much about life that we have to do. It's hard enough as it is. And in grad school, it is hard enough without making it harder. Adult is inherently hard. It's intrinsically hard. So I hate arbitrary, and I am not going to ask you to do anything just because, oh, I had to do that when I was a grad student. Well, no. If I'm asking you to do something, it is because it has a purpose. I hate arbitrary. And I will never ask you to do anything that I don't feel is important, because your time and your energy is valuable. And time that you spend working on something in class is not time that you can spend working on something else that would be more fruitful, or even recuperating so you have energy left to save for something else that will be fruitful, or even spend time with your family. That's important too. So I hate arbitrary, and I will not ask you for anything unless it is necessary. So if there is a way to do things and you can give me all sorts of bells and whistles, but they're not absolutely necessary, I don't think that they're worth the time. Which brings us to the final point. It won't be arbitrary. I will have deemed it necessary and also worthwhile. There are some things that are necessary that I don't consider worthwhile. And if I'm asking you to do those things, it is because, unfortunately, it has been asked of me. It is necessary because the university requires it, whatever. I would not be asking for it if it wasn't absolutely necessary. It might not necessarily be worthwhile. Maybe I don't know the reason why they think it's worthwhile. I just think it's red tape proceduralism. But I will never ask you for anything unless I think it is worth the time and energy that you put into it, because I hate arbitrary. Every way I do things, the way I grade, the way I structure assignments, everything has a purpose, and it's necessary, and it's for your benefit. If you have any question about what that purpose is, I am more than happy to answer it. I've tried my best to think of ways that make things we have to do easier. If you can think of an easier way, please let me know, because sometimes there are just things I miss. With technology, I'm often doing things from scratch that actually have a little button you could push because I just didn't know. I'm like that with Blackboard. I am still learning Blackboard. So if you can think of something that would make it easier, I am happy to hear that. So let's go ahead and move on. The next is preparation. My philosophy here is that I am preparing you for your career. I am preparing you not just by teaching you the skills and knowledge you need to succeed as a leader in your community, but I am preparing you with teaching you how you are expected to deal with certain challenges, handle conflict. I'm teaching you basically how you need to earn your living. So let me put this another way. I look for the allegory in class to out there in the real world, out there in your career. Everything in my classroom has some sort of corresponding aspect in your career. And in your career, you work for money. You get a paycheck. You do your job, and they pay you for it. In academia, you work for points. You work for credit. And so for me, if I take away points that somebody is owed, that they are earned, I have basically done the equivalent of going into their wallet and stealing their money. So I'd much rather err on the side of giving people points that they didn't truly earn than potentially take them away. However, points are not arbitrary. Just because I have infinite points, hey, look there's a million points right there. I can give as many points as I want. However, they lose value if I just arbitrarily hand them out. And also, there's a problem with you have to earn it in order to learn what you need to learn. So I insist that you do the work in order to get paid with points. I'm going to do the most I can to be as fair as possible, because it certainly doesn't hurt me to give mercy points, to give grace points, but it would hurt you. And like I said, points are not arbitrary because they do translate into real money. They turn into real money from scholarships. They turn into real money if you have to take a class over that you paid for, so now you got to pay for it again. And then there's this thing called opportunity costs. And opportunity costs are the money that you could have been earning if you weren't doing something else. So these points actually do turn into real money, but you got to earn them. What do I mean by you got to earn them? Well, just think about it the way you would think about it if you were in the marketplace, in your career. If you're a chef, for example, you're a sous chef, and the head chef is making a soup and realizes they're out of onions, and she needs an onion. So she sends you, her sous chef, the under chef, the one that's learning how to become a chef, to the store to buy an onion so she can finish the soup. And then the sous chef comes back and hands her an apple. An apple does not work. That is not what she was paying him to do. She was paying him to go and get an onion because an onion is what she needs in order to finish this soup. So if he said, wait a second, I spent all this time, I went out and got it, you're not even going to pay me something for that? The answer is going to be no. So when someone comes to me and says, hey, I know I didn't give you what you asked for in this assignment. I know you asked for a peer-reviewed journal article and I gave you a blog post, or I just didn't follow directions and I kind of did my own thing. But you know what? A zero is the same thing as if I didn't do anything at all and I did something. So I think that's worth something. The answer is no, it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing to me. I'm not paying for that, because I also don't want to reinforce the false idea that you can just do anything and you want in your career and still get paid. Not only will you not get paid for not doing your job, you will get fired so they never pay you again. Another example, imagine that I hire somebody to build me a swimming pool in my backyard. And that person digs the hole for the swimming pool. So big hole for the swimming pool, but gives up somewhere between the hole and actually filling it with plaster, installing the pump, etc. All necessary steps to get this pool installed where we can actually use it for its intended purpose, which is swimming. And this person comes to me and says, hey, I worked a couple days to dig that hole, and my rate is so much money a day, so you owe me this much. My answer is no, I don't. I don't owe you anything, because I hired you to fulfill a purpose, to deliver a product. And a big hole in my backyard is not a product. I can't use this. I can't just swim in that big mud hole. It doesn't work that way. In fact, you've done damage. So of course I'm not going to pay you for not completing what I hired you to complete. But more times than not, I have students come to me and say, okay, listen, I know the paper, we had to do A, B, and C, and I only did A and C, or I only did B and C. But A and C and B and C is 2/3 of the paper, so can't I get points for what I did? And the answer is no. The answer is no, because you did not give me what I asked, which was a complete assignment that required those 3 things. Also, I'm trying to prepare you for a career, and in your career, if you don't do your job, you get fired. If you are negligent, you could potentially get sued and even go to jail. So the stakes are a lot not as high here, and that's the idea. I want you to learn this here, because it's better to learn this here than it is to fail out there. So, and I'll talk about this in the next slide, kind of designed ways where it's safe to fail. It's a very soft place to land. So we baked right in a way for you to have some bumps and bruises, but still end up succeeding. So points for pay, you've got to earn them. You've got to conduct yourself the same way you would in your job. So you're expected to show up on time. You're expected to dress appropriately. You were expected to meet deadlines. All those things that you can expect from your job, I expect from you here. Also, people can be a pain, but you got to endure them. There is a real tendency, especially with online classes, to not understand that there is a person behind there. And there's also a tendency this day and age to not handle conflict correctly, to be passive aggressive, to go over people's heads, to go behind people's backs. I mean, that's always kind of been a tendency, but it's a lot easier now in the internet age. So you have a tendency to treat your coworkers, even if they drive you absolutely crazy, even if they're not pulling their weight, you have a tendency to treat them with a certain degree of professionalism because you know you have to deal with them every day. In a class where you never have to look these people in the eye, if it's an online class, or you're never going to see them again, you don't have that same incentive to exercise civility, to handle conflict appropriately. And I expect you to treat your interactions with people in this class, including myself, the same way you would if they were people you had to see every day in your job. So I expect you to interact with me as if I were your supervisor, as if I was the one telling you what you needed to do, correcting you, giving you feedback on how to do it better. I expect you to treat me the same way you would treat your boss, with that degree of respect and civility. And I also expect you to treat your coworkers in here, your classmates, the same way you would treat them if you had to see them every day. This means not going over people's heads. So if you have a problem with me, or going behind people's backs, talking to another professor, this means not talking about another professor to me. This means not going over your classmate's head if you have a problem with them. You handle conflict correctly. It's very important because we live in an age where anything can be forwarded and screenshots will come back to bite you. So you think you're just complaining, blowing off steam, but if you send it to somebody, it can very easily go back to them, and most of the time it does. And this is the sort of thing that will get you fired. At the very least, you're probably going to get some retaliation for it, and you don't want that. So let's learn here how to deal with people. Basically, this class is designed like a job, and I expect you to treat it like one. The final P is practice. Basically, we are practicing how we are going to succeed in our career. This is your career simulator. Here's what I mean by that. I have designed everything as much as I can to correspond to things you will have in your career and to mimic your career. In your career, you will have deadlines. You will have instructions you have to follow to submit grant proposals, reports, etc. There will be expectations, and I'm trying to teach you here how to meet those expectations so you'll be able to succeed. A simulator only works if it is as lifelike as possible. Otherwise, you really don't learn what you need to learn. Think of it like a flight school and a flight simulator. People who are learning to fly a plane do not get up and fly the plane because it's not going to teach you anything if you crash and die because you've lost all the opportunity to learn. So what they do is they put you in a simulator where you will learn why you crashed if you do crash. And also no one dies, and a multi-million-dollar plane potentially is not ruined. And it's kind of like how when you were learning to drive, or at least when I was learning to drive, my parents did not take me to the interstate. They took me to an empty parking lot because it's better for me to hit a curb than to hit a car or a person. So this is designed to be a safe place for you to crash. I don't want you to crash, but I'd much rather, if you're going to crash while you're learning how to fly, I'd much rather you crash here. I have baked right in everything you need to be able to redeem yourself if something big or bad happens. There is nothing that is absolutely going to be the end all be all. There's no single mistake that you can possibly make that I have not thought of a way to redeem it. So what I mean is, basically, I want you to feel free to ask me for a second chance if you need it. When I say that I've baked right in wiggle room, let me give you an example. In most classes, lowest grades are dropped. So if something just doesn't quite hit you and you do poorly, it's not the end of the world. There's no need to redo it. In fact, that's a waste of time. Just dust yourself off and move on. Also, I typically make my final exam worth more than the midterm. The reason why is because students typically do better on the final. It just takes time for things to gel. And so you have a chance at the very end, once you know everything from the class that you need to know, once you have plenty of time to get the grade you need. I also, at different intervals, check in on you where I ask for proposals, I ask for drafts. So all of your eggs are not in one basket, and if you don't get it along the way, it doesn't turn into not getting it when it's a large percentage of your grade. So I have already worked out ways to help you succeed. Everything is designed for your success. Now, if something happens, remember that this is your career simulator. If you miss a deadline, like a big deadline for like a grant proposal or a grant report, that ship has sailed. You cannot call whatever the grantor's name is and say, oh, hey, by the way, I uploaded the wrong proposal. And they'll say, oh, sure, the other one. No, they'll in fact take that as a sign that they dodged a bullet, because if somebody cannot check their proposal and make sure that they're uploading the right one, this is not somebody that you necessarily want to give a lot of money to. So in this class, if you do something like that, if you're just not paying attention, you upload the wrong thing, I'm going to remind you that if I had ever done that, all of the hours of labor that I worked on would be lost. I have accepted things because of errors like that. But those are errors I expect you to only make once. I want you to feel comfortable asking me if something happens and you need a second chance, you need help. But the way you learn, I don't want to teach you that this is commonplace, that you can get away with this in your career. So this is not your career. This is a simulator. So there is some benefit to reaching out to me if you need it. But on the whole, I'm going to expect you to treat this as if you're in a really big plane and you really could crash. I expect you to take this as seriously as you would in your career, because that's how you're going to get the most out of it. But also, you are learning. I don't expect you to know things. Otherwise, there would be no need to learn it. So if you don't get something, do not feel the least bit shy to reach out to me to see if I can help you, because that's what I'm here for. Ultimately, what I want is for everybody to be successful. I want you to get this material because you need this material to be a competent professional. But I also want you to be ready to apply this material and not make any unnecessary mistakes that could jeopardize your future. So that is my goal. This is my teaching philosophy. The next video I need you to watch is Boilerplate Guidelines for Conduct and Graded Materials. I am so happy to have you in class, and good luck.